The year is 1935. The place is a frozen, lonely field in Manchuria, China. At this time, the Japanese military has taken over the land. They are building something massive. It looks like a factory, but there are no windows. High walls surround it. Barbed wire is everywhere. At the main gate, there is a sign. It says, Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. To anyone passing by, it sounds like a good thing. It sounds like they are helping people stay healthy and providing clean water to soldiers. But inside those walls, there was no water being purified. There was only a nightmare. This was Unit 731, a place where science was used as a weapon. For years, the records of what happened here were locked away in secret boxes. They were hidden by governments and buried in the ground. But today, the files are open. This isn't a history lecture, it's a journey into the darkest corner of World War II. It is the story of how a factory of healing became a factory of death. The big lie, the cover name. The Japanese military did not want the world to know it was developing biological weapons. These weapons, often called germ bombs, could spread deadly diseases instead of using bullets or explosives. To hide this work, the military gave the facility a harmless, boring name. It was officially called a water purification center. To anyone outside, it sounded like a place focused on health and clean drinking water. The disguise went even further. Scientists and doctors working there wore white lab coats, just like normal medical researchers. Many were told or claimed that their work was for the good of Japan, helping public health and preventing disease. On paper, everything looked legal and ordinary. There were no signs that anything dangerous or secret was happening inside. Because of this cover name, international groups such as the Red Cross never closely inspected the facility. There was no reason to suspect abuse, experiments, or prisoners. The name worked exactly as the military planned. It protected the operation from outside attention and allowed it to continue in secret for years. Behind the walls, however, the reality was very different. Prisoners were held without rights, and deadly experiments were carried out on human beings. The false name helped hide these crimes from the world. It was a simple lie, but an effective one. By calling a weapons program a water purification center, the military created a disguise that was quiet, believable, and incredibly deadly. The Maruta, people as objects. At Unit 731, the scientists did something deeply disturbing to make their actions feel acceptable to themselves. They stopped calling prisoners by their real names. Instead, they used the word Maruta. In Japanese, Maruta means logs. This word choice was not accidental. By calling human beings logs, the scientists began to think of them as objects instead of people. A person with a family, feelings, and a life became something disposable. If a prisoner died during an experiment, guards would not say, "A man died today." They would say, "We lost a log today." This kind of language mattered. Words shape how people think. By removing names and replacing them with a cold, inhuman label, the scientists trained themselves to feel less sympathy and less guilt. It became easier to hurt, experiment on, and kill prisoners when they were no longer seen as human. This dehumanization was a key part of how the crimes of Unit 731 were possible. Once people were treated like objects, there were no limits. The experiments grew more cruel, and the suffering became routine. This is how the nightmare truly began, not just with weapons or laboratories, but with words that erased humanity. Shiro Ishii, the mastermind. Every dark story has someone at its center, and for Unit 731, that person was Shiro Ishii. Ishii was a trained doctor and a powerful general in the Japanese army. He was smart and very convincing, but he also loved control and power. He believed future wars would not be won with guns or tanks, but with sickness and germs. Ishii told Japan's military leaders that diseases could be stronger than bullets. They believed him. With their support, he created Unit 731 and ran it like his own kingdom. Inside the compound, Ishii lived a very comfortable life. He had nice rooms, luxury items, a movie theater, and special labs that only he could use. While prisoners suffered, he lived safely and comfortably. Ishii also controlled how everyone acted. He pushed doctors and scientists to do more extreme experiments and ignore what was right or wrong. He encouraged cruelty and said it was for science and the strength of the country. Human life did not matter to him, and pain became normal under his rule. Shiro Ishii was not just in charge, he was the reason Unit 731 became so cruel. His ideas, power, and lack of care for others turned the place into one of the darkest and most brutal parts of World War II history. The plague bombs. The most dangerous weapon created at Unit 731 was not a gun or a bullet. It was a bomb designed to spread disease. These weapons were filled with fleas, not explosives. The fleas carried the plague, a deadly disease that killed millions of people in Europe during the Middle Ages. Scientists at Unit 731 raised huge numbers of fleas in jars under controlled conditions. The goal was to infect them with plague bacteria and keep them alive long enough to be used as weapons. Once ready, the fleas were placed inside special porcelain bombs. Porcelain was used because it would shatter easily when dropped, without burning the fleas the way metal explosives might. The idea behind the weapon was terrifyingly simple. When the bomb hit the ground, it would break apart. The fleas would escape, jump onto humans and animals, and begin spreading disease. People would not see an explosion or hear gunfire. Instead, sickness would slowly spread through the city, often before anyone understood what was happening. This made the weapon especially frightening. It was silent and invisible. There was no warning and no clear enemy to fight. These plague bombs showed how Unit 731 tried to turn disease itself into a weapon of war, putting entire populations at risk without firing a single shot. Frostbite experiments. The cold truth. Manchuria, where Unit 731 was located, is known for its extremely cold winters. Temperatures often dropped far below freezing. Japanese military leaders wanted to know how to protect their soldiers from frostbite during winter warfare. Instead of using safe tests or animals, the scientists chose a cruel path. They used Maruta human prisoners. Prisoners were taken outside into the freezing snow. Their arms and legs were soaked with water and held in the cold until the skin froze solid. Doctors knew the limbs were frozen when they became stiff and made a hard sound when struck, like wood. Once this happened, the experiments began. The scientists then tested different ways to thaw the frozen limbs. Sometimes they used hot water. Other times they used fire or left the limb to thaw naturally. They carefully watched and wrote down how the skin changed, how long it took, and how much pain the victim showed. Every scream and movement was recorded in notebooks. The victims were not treated as patients. They were not given pain relief, and many did not survive. The scientists called this work medical research, but it was not meant to help the prisoners. It was torture. These frostbite experiments showed how science was twisted into something cruel, where human suffering was ignored in the name of military knowledge. The pressure chambers. In the declassified files, there are records of vacuum experiments. Scientists would put a person inside a glass tank and suck all the air out. They wanted to see how much pressure the human body could take before it broke. They watched from behind the glass with stopwatches. They weren't trying to save lives. They were just curious about how people died. It was a nightmare that no one could escape. Attacks on real cities. This wasn't just happening in a lab. Japan actually used these germ weapons on Chinese cities like Ningbo and Changde. They flew planes over the cities and dropped wheat and cotton filled with infected fleas. Soon, thousands of people started getting sick and dying. The people had no idea why. They thought it was just a natural sickness. Unit 731 scientists secretly watched from a distance to see if their invention worked. The Fortress of Secrecy. Unit 731 was its own city. It had an airport, a railway station, and a crematorium to burn the evidence. The workers were never allowed to leave. They were told that if they spoke about what happened inside, they and their families would be killed. Because of this silence, the world didn't find out the full truth for nearly 40 years after the war ended. The Great Cover-Up, 1945. In August 1945, the war was ending. The Soviet Union was coming to Manchuria. Shiro Ishii panicked. He ordered his men to blow up the buildings. He told them to kill the remaining prisoners and burn every single paper. They even threw chemicals into the rivers to hide the germs. They wanted to make sure that when the Allies arrived, they found nothing but ruins and ash. The secret deal. When the war was over, the United States found the scientists of Unit 731. But they didn't put them on trial like the Nazis. Instead, they made a secret deal. The US military said, "Give us your research on biological weapons, and we will give you immunity." This meant the scientists would never go to jail. Shiro Ishii lived a long life and died in his own bed. Many other doctors from the unit became famous professors and business leaders in Japan. The victims never got justice. Unit 731 is a dark reminder of what happens when we forget that every human life has value. The water purification nightmare ended in 1945, but the secrets lasted for decades. The villains didn't go to prison. They went back to their lives. They took their secrets with them. And that leaves us with a question that still matters today. Today, we have more technology and more science than ever before. But do we have more heart? If a government told a scientist today that they could change the world by doing something cruel, would they say no? Or is there another Unit 731 out there right now, hidden behind a different, boring name? History isn't just about the past. It's a warning for the future. Do you think the US was right to give those scientists immunity to get their research? Tell me in the comments. If you want to see more declassified stories from the darkest days of WW2, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We cannot let these stories be forgotten.